Thank you very much, Catherine. In an environment where politicians attract distrust, I must say I have huge respect and trust for our local politicians. We are well served. Thank you. Now, I'm just going to give you a brief summary of the scheme, and I'm also going to explain that, unlike Catherine, I do have a view about these proposals, and I hope I will make that clear. And I very much want to encourage you to support these proposals, but in the end of the day, it's up to you what you do. So what I'm going to do very briefly is give it just an outline of the principal points of the plans, how you can comment to the Vale on these plans, what should be inside the community hall, and lastly, how you can help us to deliver this plan and make it real. In outline, the plan has got 5 main elements. The Institute site would be redeveloped for housing, but retaining the character of the Institute building. So that as you walk up and down North Street should not look different to what it does now. So if you like the current Victorian structure that sits there, and we're all quite fond of it in a strange way, it's been there for a while, it's part of Marcham's character. We have the opportunity to retain that character here. A limited area on the field will be developed for housing to raise sufficient capital to enable us to build the other things, and I'll show you the capital budget in a moment. We will be realigning and aiming to improve the number of sports facilities we can provide. We are building a new community hall building and a nursery facility which we plan to be separate from the main building, so that both the main building and the nursery can properly function as they need to support community requirements. Now, those of us who've been in the village for many, many years may not need a nursery, but with all the houses being built in the village, there sure as hell are going to be a lot of young people to be accommodated in the future. The outline of the plan is just on this sketch here. I'm not going to do any more than point out that the Anson Field is here, with the new housing in this position here, the new hall facility there, and the nursery would be accommodated in a separate building over here, providing that all of the fundraising that we have in our budget comes to fruition. The capital budget I spoke about, this is how we're going to pay for the new building. This comes from the receipt of capital through the sale of the Institute site and part of the Anson Field to be developed for housing, which would raise £1.6 million. Contribution from parish council sources, which includes Section 106 money that's already been promised, a gift of £180,000 from the King's Field owners at the time that development was put through, plus new Section 106 money coming from other new developments in and around Marcham. So the parish council has been debating how it can secure that funding for this process. So if you want to know more about that, you need to speak to our parish councillors who are in the room. On the expenditure side of this, we will be, the budget to build the community hall is round about £1 million. The replacement of the nursery building, new nursery building, is about £300,000. Car parking, multi-user games area, equipment, planning costs, legal costs, and so on, amounts to just a little bit short of 2 million, so £1,940,000. The surplus between the money raised and what it costs to build this has to go to restoring the endowment position of the Anson Trust. I will explain in a moment how the Anson Trust will not be involved in the running of facilities that we're talking about. So the Anson Trust is planning to revert to being a grant-giving charity that will be enabled to help activities in the village, community activities, in the future. The management that's proposed for this, and is part of the business plan, has been submitted to the Vale. So if you've been to look at the planning application, amongst the documents you'll see something called business plan, and it includes how we propose to manage this whole facility. The Anson Trust owns the property that we're talking about, but the plan is that the Anson Trust, through a long legal lease, will lease the land and the buildings to the managing trustee, who will be responsible for all of the operations on these facilities, including the cost of running them. The Community Facility Steering Group has taken a decision that that role is most effectively taken over by the existing Marcham Community Group, which would be slightly reorganised to fit this purpose, but is essentially has the right setup to do that. The trustees sitting on that managing body, the directors of that managing trust, will be elected by the community. So people will be nominated to become trustees by user groups, by the community, and these will be elected by the community to that job. So the operation of these facilities will be subject to democratic accountability within Marcham. And hopefully that change helps to build confidence that the community can run these facilities in the best interests of the community itself. The day-to-day operations would be carried out by a community hall committee and a sports facilities committee, who would work within set budgets to operate the facilities on a day-to-day basis. It is vital, for the reasons that Catherine has already emphasised to you, that you make comments to the Vale as a planning authority. Because of the complexities of this scheme, we as a community need to convince the planners and the planning committee that we as a community are totally behind it. So the more support we can give to the Vale, and the more that can be expressed to the Vale, the easier it will be for the planners to let this go through. Their presumption when they start looking at a plan that's submitted by a developer is that this is driven by commercial profit motives. This is a plan and proposal that's driven by community needs, and we have to make that crystal clear. And the best way to do that is for members of the community to tell the Vale that they support this for these reasons. And the way to make that communication is, around the room here, we've got sheets of paper that give you details here, so you don't need to remember any of this. The details are here. But if you follow this link here, those of you who are happy doing things online, this takes you to the page of the Vale Planning website, which has got the Marcham application on it. And within that page, there's a table of things, but there's one of the elements of the table called Consultation or Notification, and there's an orange button that you click on to make your comment. And it takes you through a web form on which you give your name and address, whether or not you're objecting or supporting the application, and space to make as much comments, or you can attach documents if you wish, or you can just make your comment in the space. You press the submit button, and that goes automatically through to the Vale and appears amongst the lists of comments on that planning application on the website. For those of you who may not be comfortable doing things online and prefer the old-fashioned pen and paper method of communication, we are also providing on this guidance sheet the address of the Vale Planning Office in Milton Park, to which you can send your comments. The Vale prefer you to use the online method because it's less work for them. But if you write into them, they're obliged to treat that comment equally. What doesn't work so well is to raise a petition and send in a petition, because they tend to regard that as one comment. It's much better for 100 people to send in 100 comments than it is for 100 people to sign a petition and send that in as effectively one comment. So that's why we have not done this through a petition route. Most importantly, the deadline for submitting your comments is the 3rd of February. That's not very far away. So I would encourage you to send your comments in within the next week, or even better, this weekend. The online system is available 24/7 to respond to, providing their servers are operating, which they usually are. So please, 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 if you do nothing else from today, please send in your comments. I'm not going to tell you whether to support or object, but I'd be ever so pleased if you supported. We've already mentioned the community hall, and there are pictures like this that you've already seen through your door on the invitation to today's event. This is a schematic outline of what the village hall would look like. It would be about this size, but the internals of that are still to be defined, as Catherine said. What appears in the planning application is just an example of how you might lay it out. Most people I've spoken to think it's wrong because it hasn't got the right bits and pieces in the right places. Don't worry about that detail. The Community Facility Steering Group will be working on what details we actually do need in the hall based on the information that we receive from the community and the background we've got. So like I said, the planning application is outline only for the hall. It will need to be followed up by a subsidiary set of plans in due course that show the details. The Community Facility Steering Group is going to be working on the details, and we need your ideas. Now, we've already received ideas in the form of the community-led plan, which many of you kindly contributed to in 2013. Yes, my goodness, it's already 3 years ago. And one of the big factors is that quite a lot of people have moved into the village since this was published in the last 3 years. I have some spare copies of this. Interestingly, it's a diminishing pile. So anyone in this room who hasn't seen this because they're more recently into the village, please come and take a copy of this, because it tells you what nearly 90% of the village thought they needed by way of future facilities and arrangements in Marcham. So I think it would be interesting reading for you anyway. I really want to emphasize very, very strongly that we must make this plan work. Previous plans, as we know, have come and gone and have failed on various viability issues. Time is running out, particularly for some of the sources of funding available to us. And currently, the Anson Trust continues to drip feed a loss out of its accounts. So the later we leave this, the less money will be available to complete the scheme. We believe, when I say we, I mean the Community Facility Steering Group, that this is the best chance we have to build lasting community facilities of the kind we need. So please, please give this your support. Don't think there'll be another opportunity coming along if this one doesn't work. We just can't see where it's going to come from. This is plan A. We don't see a plan B. So please think about it in that way. And if in the comments you make to the Vale, you don't quite like the shape of the toilets in the drawing on there, please don't make that a point of objection, because that won't be relevant. It's a comment on the proposal overall. Do you support the overall proposal? And leave it to your community representatives to work up the details. By all means, pass on your comments to us so that we can address them. But keep the comments to the Vale focused on the major planning issues. So I think that covers all I was going to say. I'm now going to hand over to Chris Brotherton from Thomas Homes, who's going to just outline a bit more about the plans themselves.